All you lovers of history have surely encountered the term historiography and wondered about its meaning. Historiography is the study of the methods of historians in developing history as an academic discipline, and by extension is any body of historical work on a particular subject. The historiography of a specific topic covers how scholars have studied that topic using particular sources, techniques, and theoretical approaches. The historiography of Christopher Columbus has evolved over time and is a fascinating subject. The Columbus of today is definitely not the Columbus of past generations. His reputation has waxed and waned over the past 5 centuries. In historiography, the term historical revisionism is the reinterpretation of a historical account. It usually involves challenging the established, accepted, or traditional views held by scholars about a historical event or time span or phenomenon, introducing new or contrary evidence, or restating the motivations and decisions of the people involved. The revision of the orthodox historical record can reflect new discoveries of fact, evidence, motive, and interpretation, which produce a revised history. In certain controversial cases or dramatic circumstances, revisionism involves a reinterpretation of the moral meaning of the historical record and reversal of older moral findings and judgments in which right becomes wrong and the virtuous heroes, good guys, or positive forces are depicted as sinful villains, bad guys, or negative forces. At a basic level, historical revisionism is a common and continuing dialogue between the present and the past, and the less controversial process of developing and refining the writing of history. Historical revisionism is thus the means by which the historical record, the history of society, as understood in its collective memory, continually accounts for new facts and interpretations of the events that are commonly understood as history. Revision is the lifeblood of historical scholarship. History is a continuing dialogue between the present and the past. Interpretations of the past are subject to change in response to new evidence, new questions asked of the evidence, and new perspectives gained by the passage of time. There is no single eternal and immutable truth about past events and their meaning. The unending quest of historians for understanding the past, that is, revisionism, is what makes history vital and meaningful. Without revisionist historians who have done research in new sources and asked original, new, and nuanced questions, we could remain mired in stereotypes. In the field of historiography, the historian who works within the existing establishment of society and has produced a body of history books from which he or she can claim authority usually benefits from the status quo. As such, the professional historian paradigm is manifested as a denunciation stance towards any form of historical revisionism of fact, interpretation, or both. In contrast to the single paradigm form of writing history, revisionists are characterized by several paradigms that derive from a tradition of claims, counterclaims, and debates over the fundamentals of research. Some critics outright reject certain radical or trendy revisionism and new theories as non-academic conjecture not worth refuting. They claim its blatant reinterpretation of the true historical record treats the evidence cavalierly. Furthermore, they feel these believers in fanciful narratives present themselves as sober historians, yet when it suits them, the evidence is accepted at face value and literally, but when the evidence does not suit them, it is handily discarded or distorted. The revisionists, on the other hand, state that the reason mainstream scholars from related disciplines do not accept these ideas is because they have established their careers on conventional interpretations, and that to accept other, newer theories could diminish their academic authority. An expansion and deepening of the pool of historians voids the existence of a definitive and universally accepted history. Therefore, is presented by the revisionist historian to the national public with a history that has been corrected and augmented with new facts, evidence, and interpretations of the historical record. That is, readiness to challenge official explanations. Every period in history should be followed, in due course, by skeptical reassessments of supposedly sacred assumptions. For historical revisionism is an essential part of the process by which history, through the posing of new problems and the investigation of new possibilities, enlarges its perspectives and enriches its insights. Revisionist historians contest the mainstream or traditional view of historical events and raise views at odds with traditionalists, which must be freshly judged. Revisionist history is often practiced by those who are in the minority and those working outside of mainstream academia in smaller and less-known universities, or the youngest scholars, essentially historians who have the most to gain and the least to lose in challenging the status quo. In the friction between the mainstream of accepted beliefs and the new perspectives of historical revisionism, received historical ideas are either changed, solidified, or clarified. If over a period of time the revisionist ideas become the new establishment status quo, a paradigm shift is said to have occurred. The result, as far as the study of history is concerned, is an awakened interest in subjects that historians have previously slighted. These expanded horizons enrich our understanding of the past, but they also result in works of special pleading, trivialization, and downright falsification. So beware, for most historians are influenced by the zeitgeist and the usually progressive changes to society, politics, and culture influenced by the spirit of the time. These events often come with a concentration and violence for which the term revolution is usually reserved. These developments will and should raise new questions about the past and affect our reading of large areas of history, so that future revisions may be extensive enough to justify calling the coming age of historiography an age of reinterpretation. Developments in the academy, culture, and politics shape the contemporary model of writing history, the accepted paradigm of historiography. Each generation has its own troubles and problems, and therefore its own interests and its own point of view. It follows that each generation has a right to look upon and reinterpret history in their own way. After all, we study history because we are interested in it, and perhaps because we desire to learn something about our contemporary problems. But history can serve neither of these two purposes if, under the influence of an inapplicable idea of objectivity, we hesitate to present historical problems from our point of view. And we should not think that our point of view, if consciously and critically applied to the problem, will be inferior to that of a writer who naively believes that he has reached a level of objectivity permitting him to present the events of the past as they actually did happen. As the social, political, and cultural influences change a society, most historians revise and update their explanation of historical events. The old consensus, based upon limited evidence, might no longer be considered historically valid in explaining the particulars of cause and effect, of motivation and self-interest, that tell how and why the past occurred as it occurred. Therefore, the historical revisionism of the factual record is revised to concord with the contemporary understanding of history. As we continue our study of the history of North America, let's always keep an eye and ear open for historical revisionism, its positive attributes, negative effects, and good and bad influences on the fascinating saga of our continent.